Welcome to Excel Table Talk, our monthly web show for the community from the Excel engineering team. My name is Olaf Hubel. I'm a senior PM on the Excel team, and this month with me I have Johnny. Welcome.
Thanks.
Before we jump in though, I would like to talk a little bit about the community and show you our website and what we have going on there. It's very easy to join. Just go to office.com/excel/community. Here we have our homepage. You can see we have 9 different areas, so it's very easy to find the topic that is most interesting to you. Have discussions with your peers, have discussions with us. We're on there all the time. You can also see we have a big banner right on top for the Microsoft Data Insight Summit in June. A little bit of a promotion there. Hope to see you there. It's going to be a really great summit. And one thing I like to do every month as well is highlight our top contributor of the month for the community. If you scroll down a little bit on the page, you see we actually have the top contributors list right here. It's a dynamic list based on who's most active. And one of the people who's always on top of that list is Sergey. And so if I click on Sergey, you can see he has almost 400 posts that he already did in the community. So this month, I like to call out Sergey as our top contributor of the month. Sergey, congratulations, and thank you from the Excel team for being so active in this community. We really appreciate what you're doing for us there. One last thing I like to call out in the community, we also have blogs on here. And so you can see here are some posts for the Data Insight Summit, for example, but another post that we have here is from the Excel World Championship. And it's one of our top blog posts so far on the community, and the PM responsible for it, Johnny, is actually joining me here today. Welcome, Johnny, to the show.
Thank you, Olaf. And thanks to everyone who's been reading that blog post.
Tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do on the team.
So I am a program manager on the Excel team, and we're focused on customer love. So customer love is really our sort of feedback channel between the users, so we can figure out what's working for them and improve the product, and we can also communicate with the users about what all we're adding to Excel.
Cool. And what would you like to demo today? What are your highlights? Like, what are the coolest things?
Yeah, so, I work on a lot of different things. I work with our MVP program, the Excel World Champs, as you mentioned, and I also, among with other people, work on user voice. And so I wanted to actually start by talking about user voice.
Cool.
So user voice is our mechanism for getting feedback on feature requests specifically from users. You can go out to excel.uservoice.com and basically see an Excel suggestion box. You can give us feedback on all our platforms, Android, iOS, iPhone, Mac, as well as Windows and online. And so what I actually wanted to do today was talk a little bit about the features that we've seen come in to the Excel for Windows suggestion box, and actually walk you guys through a few updates we've actually put into the product as a result of getting your feedback. So if we go over to the Excel for Windows page, you'll see we've got tons of information. These are requests coming from you all, the public, about features you'd like to see added to Excel. And you can search on them, you can make your own suggestions, or you can go out and vote up people's suggestions that have already been put on if you think that's a great idea and you'd like to see it added to Excel.
So everybody in the community should really go to User Voice now, look for those features that they think are missing and start voting them up and letting us know what we should work on.
Absolutely. I would happy to have this place flooded with votes, so we've really got a great idea on what users are interested in. Now on this page, it's actually really easy to see not only what suggestions people have done, but what's the work that the Excel team is actually starting to get running on, where we're trying to add features to the product. And you can even quickly see what features we've already put into Excel. And that's what I want to show a little bit more of today.
Cool.
So we got a lot of feedback looking at CSV files working in Excel. And so I'm actually going to pop open my Excel desktop here and show you an example of the work we've done directly as a result of user voice. So I've got this little list here of countries in the UN and some information about them. One thing you'll notice is there's text scripts here that are not traditional Latin characters. This is no problem if you're working in a typical Excel format, XLS, XLSX. But when you want to see things like Arabic script or Cyrillic scripts and you start using CSV files, it used to be in Excel you would lose this information. We wouldn't save that data because of what's called the text encoding we would use. So there was big demand on user voice to say, hey, get us UTF-8 encoding, which basically enables a lot of this stuff. So now, from this Excel file, if I just go to File, Save As, working like I would any other file, you'll see in my drop-down menu, I have the option for CSV UTF-8. So that change is directly thanks to a user voice suggestion that has about 250 votes. We saw it, made the change, and it's now in Excel. The next thing I'll show you is actually if I click Save, people that have worked with CSVs before will know what to expect. They would think a pop-up window would show up saying, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Because you're going to lose some data when you save as a CSV. But now when I click Save, I'm not going to get that window. Instead, I'm going to get a little message up at the top that says, hey, you might have some data loss. It's not an interruption to my work. I don't have to click a window, click an OK button. I can just keep going and see the message up at the top for my own reference. And actually, if I click this Don't Show Again button, now the message isn't going to show me at all. If I'm a CSV expert, I use it all the time, I know when to expect the data loss, I don't need to worry about it, and I don't need Excel to tell me every time. That's thanks to over 1,000 votes on user voice. And at any time, if you wanted to get that message back, you can go into File Options and turn it back on, because we know sometimes you accidentally click a button or sometimes you want to get reminded again. So those are a couple of our CSV features, but we've also gotten feedback about how to improve the pivot table experience. And so that's what I want to show quickly as well. If I open up this same file, I'm going to actually make a quick pivot table off of it. I'll select all my data, go to Insert, Pivot, and we'll open it up on a new screen or on a new worksheet. And as I start building this pivot table, I think people that have worked with pivots a lot are going to be familiar with this experience. I'll start dropping in the information like the decade and the year, maybe get population information. And this pivot all sort of gets formatted the way Excel has default format set. So people that work with pivot tables a lot of times the first thing they do is go through and change everything because they want their pivot to look the way that works best for them. So maybe they like things in an outline format, maybe they want to add subtotals at the bottom of the list, all the changes you might want to make. People spend a lot of time making this change to every single pivot table they create. Well, we heard the feedback loud and clear, again, thanks to user voice. Over 500 votes from people telling us it'd be really great to set my own default settings. So now, if you go to File and Options, you'll see under the Data menu, you've got this button for editing the default layout of a pivot table. So now I can go in and make all these settings however I want them. I can even set up a pivot table the way I want and import those settings directly in. So now I can take those settings and say, hey, this pivot table, this is the way I want to do every pivot table going forward. And there's a lot of detailed information on what are all the fine tweaks and adjustments you might make, the things that people that work with pivots a lot are constantly doing. So we expect this to be a huge time saver for people to now be able to say, this pivot table looks exactly the way I want.
It really is. Like I was reading in the community already, and our MVPs are going crazy over this. Like they're so excited that we added this.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Such a time save.
Yeah. You know, I worked in finance before coming here, and a lot of my finance friends told me the first thing I should do when I move over to the Excel pivot team is make sure default pivot tables can be set up. Now, I didn't get to create it, but I'm happy to see it's there. So if we actually go back to our original data and set up a new pivot table, it's actually going to be pulling in that formatting, that setting, just that as I set up, without having to do all those options and resetting each time. So again, huge time saver. We're really happy to see this out there because we think it's one of those things that'll have an immediate impact on how people do work.
And if you want to learn more about this specific feature, we also have a blog on our community where you can read in detail how this works.
That's right. And you know, we want to put out as much information as we can, so please keep going back to the blog to learn more. Now, all of our improvements aren't just sitting in the Windows platform, so I actually wanted to go out, show a little bit of what we've done in Excel Online, because we've gotten a lot of great feedback there as well. So I'm actually going to go over to my OneDrive. I've got this same file saved out there, and I'm going to open up my pivot table file in the browser. So if we go over to our browser now, you can see it's the same file I was working with. We got a lot of feedback from people in user voice telling us that they wanted to improve the Excel Online experience. One very common thing was formatting, which can take a lot of time. So we've added the Format Painter into Excel Online. If I select a few cells, click the Format Painter, and drop it in, you'll see it works just as you expected. I've got my formats already loaded in here, colors, bold text, background fills, all painted just like you would expect the Format Painter to work. We've also improved the search experience. This was, again, another really common point of feedback. If you go out and click Find and say I wanted to find all the countries that have the word land in it, I can click the Find Next button instead of having our Find window disappear every time you do a search. So it's much easier to scroll through all of your data, and the Replace experience also works just as well. And since we've been working so much with pivots, I want to show one more user voice-driven improvement we've done to Excel Online, and that is the search experience within pivots. So now it's really easy. If I click on a pivot table and start to do the filtering, you can see the filter experience in Excel Online works a lot like it does on the Windows platform, where I can use the field and start to search and maybe get things just down to, say, decades in the 1940s. So I can get information much more quickly. Again, one of those improvements that we hope to have an immediate impact on people, because it's just as soon as you start using it, you've got an experience that you're familiar with, and it saves you a lot of time.
That's so cool. And just because we don't have the time today to demo, but there's so many things on User Voice for iPhone, for Android, and for all our different platforms that we've been improving as well. So if people want, you can actually go to the User Voice site, go to the Android group, or go to the iPhone, iOS, or Mac group, and click on there and actually have a link that will show you everything that we've done or that we're working on right now for those platforms as well.
Absolutely. We love hearing feedback from everyone about every platform. We want to improve the experience across the board.
Well, thank you, Johnny. It's so nice to share that. Can I ask you for one more favor?
Sure.
Every month on the show, we're going to do this like tip of the month. And so you're the PM here. What is your favorite thing in Excel, like your biggest time saver?
So that's a tough one to pick one favorite, but I will say, since we've worked so much with pivots, one thing I really want to show off is the customization of the quick access toolbar. So if I go up to my screen, you'll notice I've got the buttons everyone's familiar with: save, undo, redo. But there's a little button here that lets you add more information, more buttons to this quick access area. And there are a ton of commands if you go down to the More Commands option. So many different things that you can add into that little area at the top of your screen, so you can have quick buttons to get more work done. And the two that I love and I keep up at my screen at all times are the document location information and the generate get pivot data.
What do they do?
So document location, it does exactly what you would expect, which is at any time you have the full address of the document we're working with. Super easy if I want to just grab a link and shoot it over to someone via IM or email or whatever. Also, the get pivot checkbox is really, really helpful, again, for those people that are always working in pivot tables. So if we have a pivot table and we've got a little bit of information set up, which I'm just pulling in something quickly so we can see. When you do a formula, type equals, and then click into the pivot table, it generates this get pivot data formula, which is really helpful for people building reports and working pivot tables a lot. But sometimes you don't want that to show up. Sometimes you want a regular cell reference. So the way to do that is to turn off this get pivot data formula generator, which, since I've added to the quick access toolbar, is just a one-click check button instead of going through file options and getting exactly to where it is. So now I can toggle back and forth between formulas that automatically produce a long formula for me or ones that give me the quick cell reference just by clicking and unclicking this checkbox. Yeah, so those are some time savers that I think will help pivot table users a lot.
Thanks for sharing that tip. Really useful. So with that, I'd like to wrap up the show. Thank you for watching our first episode. Please join our community at office.com/excel/community. Johnny and I will be on there. We'll be answering questions. So will be our MVPs are on there as well. We'd love to hear from you. What would you like to hear next from our PMs? Which PM should I invite next on the show? And with that, thank you very much. See you next month. Yes, thanks, man. It was fun.